Hey folks, welcome back to the Ball and Breakfast with Wayne. As always, I'm Patrick coming to you with a special edition tonight. We're going to go through just a few random sports topics. Sometimes, we have episodes like this where we just want to mash up some of the, key storylines we're seeing across the world of, pro sports. So, tonight we're going to dive into a newer topic first. We haven't talked a lot about women's sports, women basketball, even comparative to, the NBA. But with what Caitlin Clark, has done over this past year in college basketball, we have some talking points we want to go over just with her, with what's going on as she enters into the WNBA, what she and her, colleagues are facing there as they become pros in their sports. So we're going to touch on that first. We'll then segue over into some familiar topics for us, some baseball, some football. We definitely want to touch on our Chicago White Sox start to the season. We are only the first few weeks here of the baseball season, but so far not so good. We'll cover what we think there. And then finally, Chicago Bears, we've definitely hit that hard, in 2024 to start here with mock drafts. Go on YouTube, go see those videos. We have a lot of different takes that we've put out there for the Bears and for other teams in the NFL. Tonight, we're just going to talk about, that number 9 pick more specifically. We know what the number 1 is probably going to be, but there's so many options out there. We're going to just kind of discuss, what we're thinking and what we would do, if we were Ryan Poles. So, stick around with us. And, if you have been following us for a while, if you're new to the show, give us a subscribe, a like, leave a comment when you're done here. Tell us what you like, what you don't like, leave us a question. We're always happy to just kind of go over what you're thinking too. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to Wayne. We'll start with the WNBA, Caitlin Clark. She's going first overall to the Indiana Fever, becomes a professional, signs a 4-year, $330,000+ contract. I'm assuming that's a rookie deal. Lots of chatter around social media about, just these contracts in general for the ladies, the average annual value of those contracts, and just how they kind of stack up with the men's game. Lots of reactions, lots of thoughts. Wayne, I kind of wanted to kick it over to you to, open this up.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. Man, this whole thing just kind of blew up, I think, with regards to, oh, how much does Caitlin Clark make? How much do WNBA rookies make? And it kind of just created this whole conversation that's been had, I think, for the past couple of years, and the pay disparities between the WNBA and NBA players. It's very nuanced. I think that's what is hard for people in social media oftentimes. I feel like in social media these days, it's like you can basically make an argument, like what 1 or 2 points in an argument, and then that's it. But when it comes to pay disparity between, say, the WNBA and the NBA, there's a lot of different factors that go into how a person gets paid. So, I'll try to definitely break it down a little bit. You have a couple points here that I like to make. I'm sure Pat has several, but I just want to be clear. Like, this is a very nuanced topic. It's not just, wow, if the women could just dunk more, like Shaq says, then maybe there'd be more viewers out there. It's more nuanced than that. So I hope that we can be a very much more educated society than what Shaq says or Charles Barkley says, and kind of go through the economics and also some of the things that happen. I think with regards to how the WNBA is promoting themselves and how they're growing here. So with all that, so I think the one thing I'm noticing is that, and this is the biggest thing, is that women aren't supporting the WNBA as much as maybe they ought to. I think that's one of the biggest arguments to be made. I think that was actually something. What's that comedian? Several comedians have mentioned it basically, of that women ought they'll watch basically the Real Housewives, and they'll watch women tear each other apart, on Real Housewives. I don't know, all these reality TV shows, but they're not going to watch a group of women lift each other up, go after a common goal, such as winning a basketball game. And that's been the biggest thing. So website traffic analysis for, I believe it's like WNBA.com, says it's 60% men actually that go to that site versus 40% women. Also, according to Statista, the WNBA is more popular amongst men than it is women. In that 11% of men said that they've actually been avid fans of the WNBA versus compared to just 4% of women. So it's pretty distinguished of like, and hey, look, there's about the same amount of men as there is women. So let's try to get all the stats and data points there. So, and then there's also been some articles about the lack of interest from men. It's in women. There's a Huffington Post article actually that breaks down a lot of this. So, Huffington Post, for very liberal-minded type of publisher out there. So, but yeah, this article by Lindsay D. Arcangelo, she wrote this whole entire article basically breaking down a lot of those data points that I just mentioned, and basically saying that there's a lot of stories like Maya Moore, who a lot of people mention, like that was kind of like the Caitlin Clark, maybe like 8 years ago. She was very much deemed as like one of the best college players to come into the WNBA. I think she won several national championships, if I'm not mistaken, at UConn, and was, yeah, very highly touted there. And she struggled. She actually said that there was much more support at UConn than when she made it into the WNBA, and that none of the UConn women's basketball followers actually, they didn't really care about her WNBA career, once she left UConn. So, and that's been a common theme too, I think, in the WNBA, is that more people care about women's college basketball than they actually have ever cared for the WNBA. So a bunch of different things there, I think, with regards to that, is just women just not necessarily caring about, women's or the WNBA specifically. Um, a couple other points I want to call out there, and I'll throw it off to you, Pat, so you can get your thoughts. Is that also, like, the one thing that kind of hurts the WNBA, in my opinion, is that it is it plays in the summer, right? I think that's like one call out. It plays in the summer. There's only 40 games as well, so compared to the 82 game schedule as the NBA. So during the summer, right, it's like, what's happening this summer? People are going on vacations. The only major popular sport is baseball, and people like to go to the baseball stadiums and fields because that's like a nice picnic or out. It's good weather usually, right? So people want to be out and about. They don't want to be necessarily in a basketball gym, where maybe the AC isn't that great. They want to be out, go on vacations, get the kids out, things like that, right? So like when you're in the playing the WNBA, then it becomes like it's tertiary, it's secondary towards other people's plans out there. So a couple of those things I'll call out there. More women involvement, more interest in them, kind of having that consistent basis of women supporting the WNBA. And then, yeah, having it in the summer, only 40 games as well. It's like, I think all those things play a factor into the overall, I guess, revenue distribution, lack of revenue from the WNBA, as well as, the contract that they have to, the players with the contract that they have to, things like that, with the WNBA owners there. So, all that being said, yeah, I think all those things are some key factors right now. But Pat, want to toss it over to you. What do you think about those things, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think they're all super enlightening points. I think they touch on a lot of the kind of the data I was looking at too. I mean, you kind of ended it there on revenue, and I think that's where I first wanted to look, because I think the biggest argument, points that have come out of Caitlin Clark and entering the WNBA after what she did at the college level, and instantly people look at her contract and go, there is complete pay inequity here versus those that play in the NBA. And I think I just wanted to be able to look at that under the microscope a little bit further, based on, the games themselves, the NBA game versus the WNBA game. And the first thing I looked at, I wanted to know total revenue for both leagues. And, you're looking back to the WNBA in the 22 23 season, they only netted $60 million of total revenue. That's not a lot at all, looking at the league itself. And they anticipate that in the 23-24 or the should say the 24 season, considering it'll be in the summertime, it'll be $200 million what they're projecting this year, which is a bigger jump. But I do think the women's games, garnering that interest. I think Caitlin Clark is a big reason for that. So that was the first thing. I want to just look at that revenue. Now, looking over at the men's game in the NBA over the last couple of years, we're looking at in 22-23, $10 billion. And this year they're projecting $10.5 billion. I mean, that in itself should just kind of drop your jaw in terms of what we're dealing with in terms of two separate businesses that find themselves under the same umbrella. But what I then looked at was the average salary for an NBA player versus the average salary of a WNBA player. In 2023, last year, men's players averaged $10 million, which is 0.1% of total revenue. Women averaged last year $147,745 per player. That's 0.2% of the revenue. So if you just look at it apples to apples in last year's figures, women were actually making a higher percentage of the total revenue in their league than the men were, even if they're completely at two, different stratospheres in terms of these individuals and what they're actually taking home. Now, the difference is we move into, this current year and you look at the projections, the projection for the jump in the WNBA versus the jump in the NBA, it's much bigger when you're looking at, almost a 3x jump in revenue for WNBA versus a very marginal jump for the men's game. So I think with that, I kind of did the math there too. And essentially women would be making about 0.07% of the revenue where men are making 0.1% of that revenue. So now you're looking at men making more than women. I think at the end of the day, there is an argument there for the women. If they do end up bringing in more money this year, that their salary should jump a bit. And it looks like it should be around 25%. So I think, taking everything into consideration, rookie contracts aside, like Caitlin Clark's, I think the average woman player should be making, instead of 150K per year, should probably be making 200K per year. So I just wanted to kind of level set and put that out there because, it is inequitable, but it's inequitable because of a lot of the reasons you just explained, Wayne. And, we're also not even looking into the international factor of the men's game versus the women's game. I don't know, the landscape of the WNBA players itself on a global scale, but I can tell you on the men's scale, we're looking at Europe, we're looking at Asia, we're looking at the continent of Africa, we're looking at South America at times. There are so many different players coming into that game and have been in the game for a while, and that interest has grown, for 10, 20 years overseas. And now that money's coming in from all over the place. So, looking at endorsements and, viewership and everything else, it's just a completely different business. So, yeah, I think, all in all, a lot of good arguments to be made. I think women are taking their strides and maybe the game will get bigger. But as of right now, it seems like, taking everything into consideration, it's fair enough for where the business is, I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely not ideal, that's for sure. And I think the good news, from the WNBA players side is it is getting better. I think the couple of things there is that you mentioned those salaries and you mentioned how at least right now women the WNBA women's players are making a higher a marginally higher percentage than the men, right? But then they're also playing less games. They're also not in as many teams out there, so it's much less of a demand. I think there's 16 WNBA teams compared to with the 32 NBA teams. So it's you got to factor that in because you look at the average WNBA team, they're loaded with top 5 picks, right, from WNBA drafts of years past and such. Just because there's not as many teams out there, so there's a lower concentration of players on teams. So that definitely is where the value of each player kind of in a way gets bumped up. But yeah, you did mention things such as percentages of revenue. I think I was looking at some of these contracts and what's been negotiated. I think currently the NBA players, the NBA players union, I should say, they negotiated the idea that they would be getting about somewhere between 40% to 50% of the revenue, right, of that revenue share with the owners. We compare that with the WNBA, and it looks like that's about 10%. 10% of revenue from the WNBA, which so that's like where the huge amount of disparities get put in there. And part of that is leverage, right? I think that's one of the things that people don't understand or they don't want to understand with regards to some of these economics on pay disparity is leverage, right? You know, you talk about like engineers at Silicon Valley or these developers in Silicon Valley, right? Software engineers, etc. at Silicon Valley. Hard to find a good software engineer at certain skill levels. You compare that to say, a McDonald's worker, right? I know the McDonald's workers are trying to unionize, they're trying to really, really like, hey, we deserve more pay and such. The honest truth is they don't have as much leverage compared to the Silicon Valley people who, they get fed. I know Facebook, right? They have cafeterias of food, people of, culinary students from like the top culinary schools in America will go to Facebook basically and make cafeteria food, like really nice cafeteria food, but because they pay so well and because Facebook or Meta or whatever you want to call it, they have all this leverage and such. They have the margins. They can do those things. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Like what at least what I'm seeing or noticing that the NBA kind of has at least currently over some of the WNBA players. Now, adding Caitlin Clark, add in continue revenue growth, which from what my understanding, it's seems to be going that way. You talked about like $60 million now projected to almost basically triple to 200 million this year. Thank you, Caitlin Clark. Then that really opens up certain doors. Also, I'm hearing expand to 16 teams in the coming years. Like that should be more revenue generated from each team. Hopefully some good best practices follow along with that. I think I was reading a lot of articles about, how the Seattle Storm is like the number one revenue generating team in the WNBA. It's not an LA, it's not the LA Sparks or whatever, it's not the New York Liberty, like it's Seattle, right? And so just the way that, from my understanding, how they run that team, and maybe that's a best practice that they can move forward, is that they hire a lot of their staff full time. Like they're very much invested on a long-term basis, where a lot of the WNBA staff and personnel, they're all part-time. A lot of them are part-time, so it's like, good luck selling tickets like year-round compared to like the NBA, right? So that's, maybe something, a best practice that a lot of these teams are going to be going forth with is like, let's pony up some money. Let's invest in this team. And then I'm hearing there's also going to be a forthcoming series, I think probably on ESPN with Peyton Manning's Omaha Productions, going to have a similar thing to like that QB1 series on Netflix, right? I know that's becoming more popular. Like having a Caitlin Clark being put on there, a reality TV type of connection there. I think that can be really valuable for the WNBA. So, and that could actually be really great, I think, for women, right? Seeing a high potent athlete, practice, go through all the celebrity tours type of stuff and all that. I think that can be really great to see that that kind of like behind the scenes look for a Caitlin Clark, and I think there's several other WNBA players there that will be joining her in there. So a lot of growth opportunities there, a lot of hope, I think, but it definitely is one of those. Okay, that's where things were. I think it's going to get better. And yeah, I think that, now with Caitlin Clark, I'm hoping that she'll be maybe much more of a champion of, hey, let's, take this negotiations more seriously. Let's get better pay, etc. Because I think out of all the people in the WNBA, she probably has the most leverage right now.
Yeah. No, I think all those points make sense. I mean, the bargaining power one too. I mean, when you look at the NBA, the league's been around since the mid 40s versus the WNBA, late 90s, in terms of, just being founded and you know, kind of figuring out what, the issues have been on the salary front for these players, what they've had to kind of, go to bat for in a lot of senses. And the NBA has just had so much more time to grow and learn and kind of understand their worth and to obviously like see, their performance play out in terms of dollars and cents. I mean, if you look at what, Jordan, Pippen, Barkley, Malone, Shaq, what they were all making in the 90s versus, what some of the let's call them, average players in the NBA now. I mean, I think they would almost be salivating at some of these, average contracts that get, passed out per player, and especially at the max level, it's just insanity at this point. But I think there's time for this growth to take place. Like you're saying, they needed somebody like a Caitlin Clark to really grab everybody's attention. I mean, it's not to say that other players like Maya Moore or Cynthia Cooper or Lisa Leslie, like they weren't interesting. I think I remember when Candace Parker dunked, that was like a huge, obstacle. That was a big hurdle that the women's game hadn't seen before. But now you bring somebody with, Steph Curry type excitement out there, and it's like, it generated a ton of interest, ton of buzz. I think the women's national championship game was more interesting than the men's, and the whole run was way more interesting. I mean, I am a Gamecock fan, so obviously, like I had, some definite extra interest in it and the outcomes and stuff. But I do feel like Caitlin Clark made a huge, difference this year. And I think the other thing I'm looking at too is just, these salaries for women are low. What can endorsements be? Caitlin Clark, at least, is been sporting some Prada sunglasses, and I think she's going to have no problem getting endorsement deals and things to market all sorts of products for so many different types of companies. But just the marketability of women, and getting them in more spots, more outlets to make money outside the game, because we know you know fans may not arrive at the arena. I feel like for a lot of sports, fans aren't coming to the games as often for this, like the sheer fact that the economics of day-to-day life have gotten more expensive. Like, I'm a huge sports fan myself for the most men's games at the pro level, but it's like I don't go to 20 baseball games anymore every year. I go to maybe one, maybe two if I'm lucky. So and then sometimes just by choice, I don't want to spend $200 at the park. I want to spend my night at home with my own meal or drink or whatever else it could be, and kind of watch the game at home with some friends or something, or by myself. But we'll just have to see. But I do think Caitlin Clark going to the WNBA, staying in the Midwest, going to Indiana, I think that's a perfect fit for her too, because it's like right next door to her home state in Iowa, and it keeps that contingent of fans invested close by if they want to attend games. I mean, I don't know if that drive's going to be too crazy for Iowans if they want to go see her play in Indiana, but definitely will put that team on the radar too. I mean, just in terms of, it's good for the sport to have a star like that in the land of hoops, and in a state that probably is not as attractive otherwise for tourism and everything else. So definitely a big boon for them.
Yeah, and I think, with regards to, like, you're talking about sponsorships and more deals coming towards women. I think I read that Kalen Clark, you mentioned her salary is gonna be like 77,000 or something like that, and then but she's gonna be making at least like $3 million in endorsements, probably more. I think, and with the current deals that they have, I think the one big thing is like TV deals. I think they have one right now with like CBS, Amazon Prime, and Ion. But I think they're going to be able to negotiate it in 2025. So which is perfect timing, right? It's like, okay, let's see the net effect of this whole Kalen Clark things. I'm sure the WNBA, they're going to have all those data points, stats, and stuff about brand exposure that Kalen Clark has, and how that's impacting viewership. So and yeah, we did notice that the women's national championship game had more viewers than the men's national championship game because of Kellen Clark and everything that she brings there. So I think there is going to be some carryover. We'll see what happens if there is a continuation in interest of the women's college basketball. But I think with Kellen Clark and the star power she brings, Angel Reese, I know she's been a big name too, going to Chicago, the Chicago Sky. Um, there's definitely going to be a little bit of that flair, I think, that is going to be entering the WNBA this season. I know, was it Paige Bucher as well? She's going to be, coming in the WNBA, eventually, and that should be a nice, kind of name there too. So again, a lot of possibilities happening there. With the factor of, I think, getting women more involved, I think one thing that could be interesting, right? And I don't know if there's like a Meta or Facebook or Instagram person out there. I feel like if they were able to live stream or something, like a game or two on there, that would be huge, right? That would be huge. I think, I don't know how exactly that would look like, but I know Twitter's done some things in the past with regards to the NFL. Obviously, yeah, there's platforms like Amazon Prime, but if they were to advertise or just promote the WNBA more, I think on Instagram. I don't know if the WNBA can get a deal with Meta of some sort, but something like that would be great. Just because I know, Instagram, I think most of their users, I think it's like 60% women on there, and it's like great. You have a worldwide game that's universally talked about with like basketball, and then having promoting a Caitlin Clark on there. I think that could be huge for them, for the WNBA, as well as Instagram. I know Instagram. They're very much like, man, we're really like hurting women's images and body images and such. Like, great. Let's boast a little bit about the WNBA. Having these really ultra talented women. Playing this team game, supporting each other. Like, let's do a little bit more of this rather than like I don't know what the Kardashians are doing out there. So I feel like that's maybe much more use of their space there and their platform there. But yeah, looking forward to seeing what I think the WNBA does. I think in the next couple of seasons, because I think that's definitely going to be helping increase, I guess, the pay disparity or improving the pay for WNBA players.
For sure. No, I think these are all good ideas to put there out, on the table just to kind of get a discussion going. I feel like, too oftentimes maybe the research isn't as kind of dove into before, big claims are kind of put out there. I mean, it's clear as day that the women aren't getting paid even close to what the men are. I hope that that gap obviously gets closer. I mean, let's look at percentages of revenue or something that is comparable when the leagues themselves are so far apart in terms of how much they actually bring in. I want to see the equity on those fronts. But in a lot of ways, I think that bringing it home with Caitlin Clark, I think that just her presence and what she did for college basketball last year is going to make such a huge impact in the game moving forward. And just looking forward to more, women being invested in the game, playing the game, girls playing the game, watching the game, getting into that sport, and obviously more talent following her, through the door. But I think, yeah, what a great role model to kind of have the game put it as their franchise piece, and we'll just see. But I guess moving on to our second topic, looking at the Chicago White Sox. Man, what a start to the year. I mean, we are, a few weeks in, we are below 200% and a winning percentage. I don't think that's going to change much with how many days go by here in the next week or so, but man, just the way it's kind of all, shaken out. Wayne, I just want to get your thoughts and what, you know, you may basically just want to say at this point, from where you were during the off season to where we are currently, where you think we will be. Just put it all out there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Tommy Pham signing is gonna do too much for us. I feel like so. Yeah, this is definitely a season where, all right, let's just suck. Like, let's call it what it is. We're gonna suck for now. Let's get the number one pick or something. Let's move on. Let's just get as much draft capital, and then hopefully, Jerry Reinsdorf just doesn't screw this up and like fires everybody, keeps on putting us in this cycle of firing managers, GMs, or whatever, or sticking with the GM for maybe 10 seasons too long. Hopefully the cycle breaks here and things just get a little bit better. So, I will say, I am going to put my allegiance for the White Sox on a hold. I'm going to lease out my allegiance to the Seattle Mariners, actually. So I am going to sign a 3-year deal with them right now.
Oh no.
Um, Signing a 3-year deal because I'm pretty sure the White Sox are not going to be better in 2027. So, maybe 2028, we can negotiate, figure things out. Again, the leverage. So I'm going to be cheering on for the Seattle Mariners for the next 3 seasons until the end of the 2027 season. Hopefully Julio Rodriguez brings a world championship in that time frame. I think there's a lot of great prospects there happening, great pitching staff, and hey, the city is due for a World Series. So, yeah, I am going to be a Mariners fan for the next 3 years.
That is awesome. And I actually think that's probably a great timeline to get reinvested in the Chicago White Sox at this point. I mean, it's ugly. I mean, we kind of knew it was going to be ugly. I mean, looking at the offseason, Tommy Pham is a respectable baseball player. Like, I think he already becomes one of our top five hitters, I would say, for the
Yeah.
year, just being on our team. But today, I was just kind of looking at the last few days and stuff. Like Gavin Sheets is out in right field. That's not playing into the philosophy of fast. You wanted Sheets to be a first baseman, a DH, and you wanted to get away from using him in the outfield. Like he's back in the outfield. I've heard Grifol saying that they want to put Eloy perhaps in right field for some games now. I mean, that goes against playing fast. Bringing up Tommy Pham with the recent signing of Robbie Grossman, like now what are you doing? You are now blocking guys like Dominic Fletcher, Oscar Colas. You're blocking a Zach Deloche. You're blocking a lot of guys that need an opportunity to show that they can play into this new philosophy. Like they're all going to get blocked for playing time at this point. So I think the whole philosophy sucks. I think the whole organization is just it's an embarrassment. And I think going throughout this year, the one thing that I'm actually rooting for is like I kind of want them to break the most losses of all time record. Like I think it stands at like 120 plus. I think it's like 122 total losses from like a team in the early 1900s or something, 1800, late 1800s or something. But it's like I kind of want them to break that record just to prove how bad everything that they've done from top to bottom has been. And I'm almost laughing every time I watch a game where they drop it. And this is coming from a guy with a banner on his wall and has been like a fan for 30 years at the very least. And it's sad, but it's just we're so beyond the sad parts that it's almost like we're all just kind of laughing now.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the only excitement I get right now is, oh, what's Garrett Crochet doing? Like, is he pitching, 6 innings of one earned run ball, 7, 8 strikeouts? He's doing pretty well. Like, that's been like the only highlight I feel like of the White Sox this season. But yeah, like you meant, like the hitting's been atrocious, right? I think it's we've gotten the most shutouts or tied for the most shutouts through like 16, 17 games or something like that. So definitely, lots to be desired. But yeah, like I came into the season not expecting too much and it's met my expectations. So I don't know what else to say with regards to that. Had I, was I going to predict that, some of our top players are going to be hurt? Possibly, because they've been hurt oftentimes the past couple of seasons anyway. But like you were mentioning though, if we do break the record for most losses, then is this like a designation of like, okay, maybe this play wasn't working whatsoever. Maybe I was trying to be all cutesy about, just hiring internally and stuff. Maybe I had to just, well, maybe Jerry had to sell the team, right? Or maybe I had to like get somebody in, a general
Yeah.
manager from, yeah, like from, one of these great organizations, whether it be like the Tampa Bay Rays or the Baltimore Orioles, but what they're able to do out there, they're not a Yankee or Dodger team with a humongous payroll, so maybe we're able to pull somebody from over there, or some of these other organizations that are doing pretty well, I think overall. So, I mean, yeah, there's just so many ways to go about it, but I mean, they just keep on doing the same stupid things, getting people from similar systems. It's like there needs to be some like way out of the box thinking on how to construct a team, how to construct an organization from the director of scoutings, right, to player development. Like there has to be a whole revamp. And yeah, in the next couple of years I just don't see that happening. I feel like the White Sox are probably going to be just unloading a lot of their talent, a lot of this the contracts similar to what we've seen I think with Dylan Cease, who's now doing really well out there. That's like kind of like a Cy Young candidate over there at the Padres. And I think he's like a sub 2 ERA and a bunch of strikeouts there. So, I think that's going to be happening with a lot of the White Sox players that are currently on here, playing hurt. Eloy, maybe he goes over to another organization that just needs a DH, and great. Like, shut up with this talk about playing the outfield. Just go hit. Please don't get hurt. We're all good here, okay? Luis Robert, like such a tremendous talent, but he's been hurt up and down, throughout his career at the White Sox here, and Yoan Moncada too, like same thing. Like saw him pull up there running to first base. I'm like, is this just luck or is it, just awful bad luck or is it just bad, I don't know, overall management? I feel like there's just a lot of things that are just not going the White Sox way. And it's kind of just manifesting to what we see on the field here. So yeah, I just can't watch anymore. I'm just gonna go ahead and cheer for the Mariners, and I'll definitely make a trip out there, and or maybe catch a game here whenever they're in town. Because yeah, it just ain't pretty. The baseball that's being played on the South Side right now just isn't pretty whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, to the injuries for those three guys. I mean, this is nothing new for any of those three. I mean, some more than others. I think Eloy has probably missed the most time of the trio, but I mean, the fact that most of these guys don't even hustle, I'd say Luis Robert definitely does, a fair amount of hustling, but those other two, they don't hustle a lot. And maybe there's good reason why they don't hustle a lot. Maybe it's because they're, scared that if they actually do turn up and start to run, like they'll be on their butts. And that's pretty much all that's happened, kind of starting off this year. But I feel like the training staff points usually get brought in, like they need to hire a new training staff and this and that. And like, I think they actually did in the last year or so. So I think they did bring in like a fair amount of new trainers, but at some point, like guys need to be accountable and like go out and stretch and take care of their muscles and like do the right type of strength training. Like maybe they're doing things that aren't baseball specific in terms of their workouts, but at the end of the day, like you got to know your body. And for these guys to continually get injured year in year out, like it is on them at a certain extent, but then as an organization, like we now know and should know moving forward for all these years, like you cannot count on any of these three, like unfortunately, to play more than 100 games per season, and you shouldn't pay them as such. You shouldn't prioritize them as such, and the fact that Eloy is now back, it blocks, like I'm saying, it blocks some of these other younger guys, unproven guys, guys that we need to see play from getting on the field because now our best hitter has been Gavin Sheets, and now he has to find some other place to play because Eloy's going to take his spot at DH. We're still waiting on Vaughn at first. Like, so he goes right back in the outfield, which was our biggest problem last year was our defense. And yeah, so far we brought in a lot of defenders on free agent deals, and we're in the bottom 10 of defense in a lot of different metrics. So it's just all like it's very cringe. It's so laughable. Like I'm not even angry anymore. Like I was angry like a couple of years ago. I'm not angry at this stage, but I definitely do want to see this team get sold in the next 2 or 3 years. I mean, I don't know how long Jerry's going to be around, but I hope whoever the Sox sell to cares a little bit about baseball as well as making money. Like, you don't have to be the biggest super fan of all time for baseball, but just like look at it as a business that needs to just be, invested in, needs to be splashed with cash. Like we just need a Chicago team to actually go for it and continually go for it in a market that's so big, man. We're the third largest market in the country. Like, let's go. Like one of these teams stand up and like actually give one.
Yeah, if Mark Cuban was like, "Hey, you know what? I want to venture into the Chicago metropolitan area," like I would be all for it. And I don't know what his big plans would be, but I'm sure they would be great, and they would be completely different from whatever Jerry's been doing, right now. I feel like there would just be such a surge in energy, an ideas of about business innovation, innovation for the community of, the South Side of Chicago, right? Maybe less talk about all this, moving to Nashville and stuff as well. And I think, just maybe a better overall product because, he's been able to at least win a championship there and have contending teams, at least, with the Dallas Mavericks there. So, I know his name's been tossed around, but I would love to see an owner such as him, like that actually cares and has a little bit more breath there, I feel like too. So I know he's getting a little bit older, but still, he still has a lot of energy that I think a lot of White Sox fans they are just hungry for because what's been happening with Jerry over there with the White Sox, as well as the Bulls too. Like it just feels like it's a little anemic right now, and there needs to be some optimism, I think, for the future for both organizations. Honestly, right now, thank you for the championships. With MJ. and '05 there at the White Sox, but things just need to change, like because you can't just rest on those laurels right there. So, but yeah, hopefully better things to come. We'll see what happens in maybe 3 years. Maybe better. Maybe Mark Cuban does buy. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm looking, hoping for a better future, I should say, for the White Sox right now because it's not looking good.
No, not at all. I don't think it's going to get better. And enjoy the Mariners while you can. I think you do have 3 solid years of fandom to enjoy and not have to miss a beat over on the South Side. So yeah, we'll stay tuned on that front. But to wrap up the show, final topic, looking at our Chicago Bears, some optimism, some things that we can get excited about. This month, looking at the draft, which is 10 days away at this point. We've talked a lot about the number one pick, Caleb Williams. We're excited that that's looking more and more like a surefire, solution there. But we do want to turn our attention to pick number 9. We have done some mock drafts, some talking around this pick itself. You can check that out on our videos board here on YouTube. But Wayne, I just wanted to talk again through it. What are you thinking at number 9? Players itself, trade options, maybe some things you've dug up. I just want to hear what do you think is possible there? If you have some scenarios too, or some players like tangibly you can throw out there with picks, like I just want to hear it.
Yeah, I guess my main thing is if one of the top wideouts are there, like I say go ahead and take them because I think in my instance or my thinking is you want the best players available, right? Um, so I would say, yeah, if Roma Dunze is there, if Malik Neighbors is there, like take them and then yeah, we can figure out defensive end. We can I know there's like some edge rushers out there. I wouldn't mind say another year of Yannick Ngakwe or some other edge rusher like that to help maybe bolster up the defensive line at least for one more year, and then yeah maybe we use next year to draft more of that edge rusher. So like have a kind of a stopgap, to be opposite of Montez Sweat to bolster up the line a little bit. Because right now the defense is playing real. Last year they played really well. Demarcus Walker isn't terrible, at least right now. He's not your ideal long-term solution there at the edge, opposite of Montez, but I feel like he's serviceable. And when you do have a talent like a Roman Dunze or Malik Neighbors, like take them because they're honestly the wideouts are probably the best players in the draft, honestly. So I would say those would be my priorities there. Take them. Um, and if both of them are taken, and that's certainly as possible, is that both of those players could be taken when the Bears pick, then my biggest thing would be trade back. Just trade back, see what you can get. If you can get, within the first, I don't know, 17 picks or something, then hopefully that should be good enough to draft an edge rusher, more of that long-term solution opposite of Montez Sweat. If you're able to get a second or third, something like that, I think that would be great. And then with that second or third round pick, get the whiteout. That's a fun part I think about this draft for wideouts is that you can get like a pretty decent talent there as second or third. Keenan Allen, obviously he's a little bit older, like 30, 31, 32 years old. He only has maybe a couple years left in him. And then obviously DJ Moore, it's like great. There's enough talent there, but obviously you want a little bit more of that long-term solution. Tower Scott just didn't really show me enough, at least this past season. Maybe does take a step, but honestly, I feel like there's just so much talent there. There's definitely a need also for the Bears to get some more extra wideouts. So I feel like yeah, utilizing that second or third there makes the most sense. And then yeah, maybe drafting an interior offensive lineman with that fourth pick. I think that can make the most sense. Or possibly even drafting a defensive tackle too to help out, bolster up the line a little bit more. But I would definitely say the priority would be more so that interior offensive lineman to kind of just give more depth, get younger a little bit too, a little bit more talent there in the interior. Um, you know, I think there's like a couple 1 or 2 year contracts there in the middle. So I feel like, yeah, that's definitely where there's more of a need there. So that's what I initially think, at least right now, for that. Yeah, is if Roman Dunze or Malik Neighbors there, you gotta take them, and then figure things out later afterwards. Put some stopgaps in there for the defense.
Yeah, no, I'm on board with that. I feel like the way I kind of lined it up too, I had like you said, with a wide receiver at 9, Neighbors at Dunze. I even threw Brock Bowers in my number 9 speculation. I was kind of like, if Brock Bowers is there, and he probably will be, might be super interesting. I know we got Cole Kmet, but I think what a lot of people are framing Brock Bowers as is just a playmaker, a pass catcher. Like they're not even viewing him as like your tight end 1 or your tight end 2 in this scenario. It's like he's just a guy who can go out there and make plays, and whether or not he can do an end around or whether he can go for a long ball, or maybe it's just short passes or something, you're just blocking. Like I feel like he's just a total weapon out there, so might be interesting to look at that too. But I'm also with you in this whole trade down scenario. I'm not afraid of that. I think it's the right thing to do if we miss out on one of the big playmakers as well. Using Pro Football Network's mock draft simulator, I fired it up a couple times. I wanted to see it through and see what kind of trade offers I could net. Whether or not they're realistic, take it with a grain of salt. But in the first round of it, I was at number 9, and one of the top 4 quarterbacks that are being projected didn't go off the board. So in a lot of ways, teams were giving me offers that were seemingly for that quarterback that hadn't gone off the board yet. I don't see that being possible, but just some of the offers I was getting from Denver, basically the number 12 in next year's first, from New York Jets, number 10 in a round 4, from Minnesota, number 11, round 1 next year for number 9 in R75. I passed on all of them just for that simulator because I didn't think it was as realistic. But in the second go around from the Rams, they offered up number 19, number 52, and a third rounder for number 9 so that they could move up and take Dallas Turner. It's possible. It's possible. I mean, maybe a team like that would get hungry to kind of, we've talked about Aaron Donald, like that they want somebody who could be an absolute stud on the defensive line. Like maybe they go ahead and make that jump. But I guess for the sake of just walking through some of this trade down scenario, I was able to get Jared Verse at number 19. And then at number 52, Darius Robinson was still on the board here. Now, he may go up further, but we've seen drafts at times get pretty funky, and some really good players can start to fall. And like, how great would that be if we also had a third added to it to just walk away from the draft, also having some other picks, but just like if we had Jared Verse and Darius Robinson come out of this draft, just to have that kind of edge depth, just unbelievable. Like I would be almost as excited as grabbing Roma Dunze just to know that we had, that position pretty much shored up for the next 5 years. Like that's amazing. So there's just so many turns that this can go in, and I think I'm kind of right on board with you. We don't get that stud receiver just to like create one of the most dynamic group of weapons of all time for a quarterback to ever walk into. Then let's look at that trade down. Hopefully, can get like at least maybe a back end first, maybe 2 seconds or something like that in this year's draft, just to build that depth, because we still, obviously have needs, and injuries can happen throughout the league. So we will definitely need to have some guys there in reserve. But no, I'm totally on board with you.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting what happens. I think obviously in the first like 5 picks there, right? Because I think there's a lot of projections that the Vikings are obviously going to try to go up there, get JJ McCarthy, like offer their first their 2 first round picks there. If that doesn't happen, like that certainly can open things up. If JJ McCarthy and or Bo Nix, right? If they kind of fall around to where the Bears are picking, like that would be great for the Bears. That's, potentially that gets just a lot more bidders out there for, whether it is, I don't know, the Vikings if they want to trade with us, or, for Bo Nix. I know obviously the Denver Broncos, they're kind of desperate for the quarterback. But that being said, they don't have the most draft capital, and are they willing to give up the haul for that? That's a whole nother story too. And then, I think also the Raiders, there's potential for that. I know there's been some pushback. Obviously, Gardner Minshew, he's been like kind of that stopgap, but at the same time, like maybe this is his chance to kind of be serviceable, and maybe they bolster the rest of the roster around Gardner Minshew. It's totally different circumstances there, but I think, yeah, the key thing from the Bears fans' perspective, if one of those, if JJ McCarthy or Bo Nix, right, if they are there at 9 spot, I'm definitely gonna see. I'm anticipating a trade, and I'd be disappointed if there wasn't a trade of some sort. Kind of out of that nine slot for potentially a pretty good haul for second or third rounders in there. So, but yeah, I would love to see some sort of trade back like that there, and yeah, get a Jared Verse, Darius Robinson. I feel like all the tape I've seen on him, he just looks awesome. Like he seems like he can manhandle most like NFL players right now. So which I think is great there. So but yeah, like any player, any type of player like that, I feel like would be great. Opposite of Montez Sweat here. But yeah, keeping an eye out what the Chargers do, what the Vikings do. I think that should impact. I think obviously what the Bears do at number 9 there.
Yeah, I think the Chargers would be foolish to draft in that spot. I mean, unless Marvin Harrison was to fall to them for some
Hmm.
reason, I feel like they have so many holes that they've really got to get, um, I think as much depth as they possibly can in this draft. But I guess to your point on Bo Nix, do you actually think at 9, let's say the 4 quarterbacks go above with JG McCarthy, May, Daniels, and obviously Williams? Do you think that there would be a market at 9 for Nix?
That's where I'm hesitant. Like, it doesn't seem like there is, right? I feel like that's where the Broncos feel very comfortable just sitting back and like letting the draft come to him or letting the draft come to them essentially there. So, um, would I be surprised if he goes past the Broncos? Yeah. But then if I'm the Broncos, then I'm like, can we wait till the second round? Like, is that a possibility? Or will there be some of these other teams that are like, you know what? Yeah, maybe I have an aging, I don't know, Matthew Stafford, and maybe I'm thinking about, potentially using another pick or using your first pick because, hey, Sean McVay, he's trying to think long term, right? I don't know exactly what's happening over there. If I'm the Rams, I wouldn't do it, but who knows? Maybe something crazy like that does occur, and they think about a sequential plan for Matthew Stafford. Like things like that could occur. I don't know, Geno Smith. I know that's been tossed around too. Pacific Northwest. If Bo Nix were to kind of fall that range, is that something? Again, I don't know exactly, but yeah, like if I'm the Denver Broncos and he's right there, like Bo Nix, like he fits the system, I think, to the T what Sean McVay kind of wants, right? Gets the ball out pretty quickly and pretty accurately as well. So, if I'm him, I would take if I'm them, I would take him for sure. But, you know, if I would be also open to maybe trading back again if he does fall to me, right? Because I think we talked about this in our mock draft previously. I feel like the the possibilities of another team drafting him in the first round, it's a little low compared to I think all the other talent that some of these other teams need, right?
Yeah. And we've seen crazier things happen on draft day. I mean, look at what the Bears did to, you know, get in position to get Mitchell Trubisky. It was like we were
Yeah.
making some crazy, decisions at that point because we were so stressed on just making sure we got the right franchise guy at the time. And like maybe Denver is that team that starts to panic a little bit, sees number 9 coming and just calls the Bears and goes, hey, we can get you, just a few spots down here. We'll pad, your draft capital for this draft or next year's or whatever. And just make sure we get our guys. So it's totally possible. And, JJ McCarthy is, rose up the ranks so much recently that, we were looking at him as a second rounder, before the combine and even probably before the CFP took place. And like, look where he is now. So something could maybe happen in the next 10 days or so. Like, we just don't know. So, yeah, we'll just have to see. But yeah, looking forward to this draft. We got 10 days to go. We'll probably have a touch more of coverage, next week on it right before the draft comes. But yeah, overall, Wayne, I don't know if you had any other thoughts on this topic or NFL overall, but you know, basically that's just our, round robin coverage of all sports.
Yeah, I mean, hey, look, let us know if you kind of like this format. Like, we're definitely all kind of open to experimenting, but yeah, I think with regards to this draft, I'm always excited. I feel like there's like basically a whole different economy and a whole different kind of thinking that happens, come draft time, right? Like you're thinking about trading picks, you're thinking about team needs and such, whereas like the regular season, it's like, oh, uh, Aaron Rodgers, what's happening with him and the Jets over there? Oh, he's hurt and stuff like that. Like I feel like this is where the nerds kind of come out of like we will psychoanalyze and overanalyze 21, 22-year-old prospects who we've never heard about before, but in like a week or a month span time, we'll analyze every single film, every single report written about them, and think that we know everything about them. So, very much like nerding out to this and figuring out which team is going to draft who, and who's going to trade for what. So, but yeah, let us know if you like this kind of coverage and everything. A little round robin, a little bit more talking about different topics, kind of all in one sitting here. So, but yeah, liked kind of like chatting all this with you, Pat.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, echoing what Wayne said, if there's anything that comes to mind based on what you've heard tonight on women's basketball, the White Sox, the Bears, any of those pro sports in general too, just leave a comment, leave a question, or tell us, what we're missing when it comes to the coverage of those three. So we'll be back next week. Leave us a like, and with Wayne, I'm Patrick signing off for the Ball and Breakfast podcast.